Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now David Haye has explained the time that Dillian Whyte called him out just after his loss to Tony Bellew. This is what David Haye had to say about that encounter with Dillian Whyte. After my fight with Bellew, I was finished. I had Achilles surgery, I had bicep surgery before the second fight. I got annihilated. I was completely finished. Everyone knew that that was the last time I would be in the ring. The commentators asked me, "Are you going to retire now?" I was going to, but I didn't want to do it in the ring. I wanted it to take some time. Everyone consoled me. "Sorry David, you had a great career. All the best." Dillian came over and I expected him to give me a hug and say, "You've been a great ambassador for the sport and good luck." He came over and called me out. He was giving me verbals. "I'm going to knock you out, David." I said, "Dude, really? Did you just watch me against Bellew? Call him out." Maybe White is just the type of guy who sees the weak guy. Derek Chisora goes after the toughest guy. I always wondered why he called me out as I was coming out of the ring, busted up and concussed. That for me said a lot about Dillian Whyte. So there we go, that is what David Haye has had to say about that encounter between him and Dillian Whyte after his fight with Tony Bellew. Now, there is no footage of this, so we don't know, but we do know that Dillian Whyte did call out David Haye that night. He said that he would love to knock out David Haye. We saw that in an IFL interview, I believe, which was of Dillian Whyte ringside. Obviously, this is linked to Dillian Whyte losing his opponent on November 21st. Alexander Povetkin obviously tested positive for COVID and will no longer be able to compete with Dillian Whyte on November 21st. So that is kind of where it all started. Then Derek Chisora offered to take that place and have a third trilogy fight with Dillian Whyte. And obviously they're trying to get that fight, so they're talking about it a lot. But Dillian Whyte wants to fight Tyson Fury if he's not fighting Povetkin, and if he does not fight Tyson Fury, then he wants to wait for that Povetkin fight respectfully. But the Chisora fight was always there as potential for Dillian Whyte to fill that void on November 21st. That fight won't happen, and I guess you have to understand that because Derek Chisora had just come off of 12 rounds with Alexander Usyk, so 2.5 weeks later, it's not the best to jump back in there with someone who punches a lot harder than Usyk, like Dillian Whyte. So I think that it does work out for the best that they are not fighting, because if they are going to have a third fight, then it needs a little bit more time to build up, and I think that Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora need a full camp training for one another, because Dillian Whyte is a completely different opponent to what Derek Chisora would have been training for and preparing for in the Alexander Usyk fight, and vice versa. Dillian Whyte would be training in a completely different way to prepare for Povetkin, so putting them together, I mean, yes, they are both in shape, yes, they are both coming off of good training camps, but still, it just didn't fit, it just didn't work at that time. And obviously, David Haye was trying to get Derek Chisora that big fight. That's what he tries to do. He's the manager of a Derek Chisora, so he wants to get him in the biggest fights that he can. So the only way he can do that is to talk about Dillian Whyte. Now, that wasn't all, because obviously Dillian Whyte criticised Derek Chisora's corner on the night of the Usyk fight, saying that Derek Chisora was actually the boss in the corner and he had no one telling him what to do, giving him a stern advice, and that is what he needed. Someone to not control him in a sense, but tell him what he needed to do, and someone that Derek Chisora would listen to instead of going out there just looking for a knockout. So Dillian Whyte had those things to say about Derek Chisora's corner. David Haye, and I would imagine Derek Chisora, were not too happy with that. That is why David Haye has dug up this old story about Dillian Whyte. Now, obviously, with regards to David Haye saying that Dillian Whyte goes after the weaker guy, that is not true, I don't believe. I mean, you have to look at Dillian Whyte's resume to see that he doesn't take easy fights. We've seen that he fights a tough guy back to back and risks his position in the WBC, and that risk cost him last time when he fought Alexander Povetkin. So I don't necessarily believe that Dillian Whyte just goes for the weaker guy, because he doesn't. I mean, Joseph Parker, Oscar Rivas, Alexander Povetkin, some good names in his resume. Yes, he fell short in his last fight, but that was a mistake on Dillian Whyte's part and brilliant from Alexander Povetkin. So it just came together for Povetkin on that night. And I believe that Alexander Povetkin will struggle in a rematch with Dillian Whyte, because he did in the first one. It wasn't as one-sided as the commentary team made it seem. I understand that, because I believe that Alexander Povetkin had more in the fight than what the commentators were explaining. So it was a close fight, Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, was getting the better of Alexander Povetkin, but it wasn't as far apart as many said it was, or those ringside said it was. So it was a closer fight, but still Povetkin was being outworked, I believe, by Dillian Whyte, and the cleaner work was definitely coming from Whyte. So in the rematch, he does have that to take in there, to believe that, okay, he can outwork this guy, he can hurt this guy, but still there are subtle adjustments that need his attention, and of course that will happen going into the rematch, and maybe the fight being pushed back actually benefits Dillian Whyte in some weird way, gives him a bit more time and gives him a little bit of time to take off and get back to training for that rematch that will likely happen around January 30, I believe, is a target date for the rematch of that fight. So with regards to David Haye saying that he goes for the weak guy and Derek Chisora goes for the tough guy, I believe they're both the same. I think that Derek Chisora will take any fight, and I think that Dillian Whyte will also take any fight. That is where those two are quite similar. And I mean, they're always going to have this back and forth because they had a very volatile build up to the first fight. Not so much for the second one, but it was still there. And I mean, they were kind of friends after that second fight, but still the animosity remains in some way between these two. And you can see that because they are always linked. They are always asked questions about one another in interviews, so I guess it's going to come off like that. I mean, they'd say stuff about other fighters in the heavyweight division if they were asked, but obviously those two are linked. They had two great fights, so they're going to be linked, and two fights, a trilogy fight, would be incredible as well. But it's not a fight I don't believe that is a priority, especially for Dillian Whyte at this point. And I think that that is what David Haye was doing. He wasn't necessarily concerned or annoyed or anything about what happened between him and Dillian Whyte after that Tony Bellew fight, because if he was, he would have made more of it, but he didn't. I mean, we do know that Dillian Whyte was talking about knocking out David Haye ringside in an IFL interview, so we do know that. But it doesn't really matter, and I don't think it matters to David Haye either. What he was trying to do is goad Dillian Whyte into taking that trilogy fight with Derek Chisora, doing the best for his client. That is what David Haye was doing. He is not bothered about anything else other than Derek Chisora, which is kind of good, I guess, because obviously he's getting Chisora the best opportunities. That is why Chisora hired him as his manager, to get him the best opportunities and to guide his career in the best direction possible. So I guess all Haye is doing is his job. But guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.